Welcome to NASSCOM Technology and Leadership Forum 2024. I am Manisha Nair. We are talking to technology leaders to find out from them what possibilities Gen AI can unleash in the future. We are now joined by Mr. Ashwin Yardi, CEO, Capgemini India. Thank you so much, Mr. Yardi, for speaking with us. What do you think are the most innovative trends coming up using AI, and how is it impacting industries?
I think it's a very good question. So Capgemini Research Institute does a periodic research, and in one of our recent researches, what we noticed is 76% of our CXOs said they would like to leverage Gen AI to create new products and services. 71% of them said they would like to use it to create a better customer experience. So while there is a lot of buzz about using Gen AI for productivity, I think there are a lot of opportunities of Gen AI to actually create very good revenue streams, create new products and solutions. And to give you some examples, today you see it very extensively used by at least some customers. I will give you one customer who's in aircraft business. They're trying to design new aircraft components with new material science, leveraging Gen AI. Okay, that would help significantly how the aircraft gets engineered. There's another company which is in energy management or energy generation and transmission. And one of the things they do is CFEs or carbon free energy. What they are working on is to see, based on the customer demand, at the same time looking at the weather patterns, and they do solar and wind energies, how can they optimize generation and supply of solar and wind energy to some of their clients. And then using this wind patterns, the demand forecasting, the peak demand offset, they are now supplying to some of the data centers 100% CFE. Okay. Then in other areas, like just to give you one of our clients in consumer space, L'Oreal, one of the things they're doing is they've actually combined Gen AI with digital twin, and then you can check a QR code. Using that QR code, you can actually get all the details about the product, the ingredients, the way you need to use it, the impact of it, all of it without talking to anybody. All these use cases, of course, use different elements of Gen AI technologies. What really it enables is, using a text, a picture, a sound, a video, so the multimodality of it. But what it really demonstrates is Gen AI has many more applications just beyond trying to improve productivity. It can really help our customers and a lot of industries to create new products, new solutions, and drive their revenue growth.
But I think everybody's most excited about how Gen AI is impacting customer experience. I've spoken to people from the banking industry, from retail, from even the media. So the engagement with Gen AI is something that everybody wants to use and improve upon. So what do you think? Is that the lowest hanging fruit? Is that something that is going to be everywhere using Gen AI?
I think one of the biggest impacts will be in that area, because again, that's something, if you look at the trend of what happened with the consumption of or spike in internet, what happened with spike in actually use of Apple phone or introduction of an Apple phone, each of these big leaps of change has happened when there has been a big impact on customer experience. And definitely Gen AI creates that opportunity to create a significant customer experience. And again, to give you some illustration, again, one of our auto clients, now if you look at the dashboards of cars these days, they are very fancy, very sophisticated, but it causes its own challenge. Sometimes your technology handicapped, you don't know how to use it. And then it's too cumbersome while you're driving to open up a manual to figure out which, how do I do defogging of my car, right? We used their manuals and created a Gen AI based virtual chat assistant. So while you are driving, like you spoke to Siri, but this is focused on understanding the car features and using the different car
and
buttons.
It's speech enabled.
And it's speech enabled. Okay, so that's just one example. Another example, I've read about it. Nestle took one of a very old paintings, 360-year-old paintings of Vermeer, and then they've used it to create an experience to tag it to one of their products, La Laitière, which is about milk. So the painting is the milkman, milkmaid, and they're using that to create an association of a product with a very old but very famous painting, making it real and live for its customer. So you engage with that experience, and that's where then they use one of their products, the milk products, to sell it to their customer. And then lastly, as you alluded to, today we all work with wealth managers. One of the financial services companies saying they're building models to use a best of wealth manager, the best of their global economists, the best of their commodity traders and equity traders, because all this is in the knowledge base. You build a Gen AI model on it, and through Gen AI you are probably getting the world's best advisor. Okay, so these are all various different use cases, and again one of the biggest shifts in technology consumption happens when you see a big leap in experience. That's what happened with internet, that's what happened with iPhone, and probably that's what will happen with.
This is the next reset.
Yeah.
Right. What are the potential challenges and ethical considerations that company must keep in mind before they start implementing Gen AI in their processes?
Absolutely. So the thing which you need to be aware is there's some key considerations or key risks with Gen AI. So first always is explainability of the model. Okay, so get some output of the model. You need to understand. Somebody should be able to explain what that model does and why it does that. The second very important factor is fairness. A lot of these models could be trained on a biased data. Okay, so if you have tested it on all data which came from men only, it will have a very different effect for preferences and outcome for women. The third is dependability. Can you get the same result time and again and a correct result? Okay, and I'll just give you one illustration or example. You could try out multiplying 6-digit number with another 6-digit number in ChatGPT. You will always get it wrong. Okay. And then of course then you have data privacy, okay, because every time you are asking a question, indirectly you are feeding into model. Okay, you don't realize that, okay, but you're feeding into the model. And then you have a big question about IP of that model. So again, you can create a video through ChatGPT or some of these tools to Delhi, whatever it is. The question is, whose original pictures were used to create that? Okay. So these are some of the risks. Okay, what we always advise anybody who wants to get into this business or anybody who wants to implement Gen AI is first understand where does the data come from. Okay, to understand the models behind it. Okay, 3, be clear what's your use case. Okay, because that's how you will mitigate it. It's not that you will eliminate the risk, but you will mitigate it. Okay, and fourth, always try to keep how does it impact humans, and that again creates a risk factor. So some simple use cases like I mentioned, how do I use a certain button in my car are very low risk. It's very easy to implement. Okay, for anybody much lesser risk. If you're taking some strong advice on wealth management, okay, it's still high risk because you could make big decisions on it. And then the third one is very high risk and probably need to be considered with lot of caution, is when the same data and the models could be used for healthcare recommendations, and you can actually get a lot of health insights using the models, or when the governments are trying to distribute certain benefits or conversely use it for security reasons. And all these cases you might be very adversely affected by the bias in the model. So these are the things which you need to know when you go into implementing anything around Gen AI. And then again, for each one of that, there are very well defined guardrails on how can you work on the explainability, how can you work on the data model or data behind the models, the fairness of the models. And also there is a big question about sustainability of behind this, because all these models also consume huge amount of energy and power, which you don't see it, but actually it's happening in the back end. So I think these are the considerations, and there is a way to put the mitigations through the guardrails.
Right, so we need to be mindful when applying Gen AI to different processes. Now, do you think we need PPP in Gen AI for it to become a success in India?
I think absolutely, and there is a great opportunity where there is a collaboration between the government and the private sector, and I would say in 3 dimensions. The first, very clearly, the dimension is all Gen AI requires huge infrastructure. India's strongest supercomputer Airavat runs on 640 GPUs. Okay, it's 75th in the hierarchy of supercomputers. The top 10 run on 30,000 GPUs. Okay, so we need to do a lot of work in that space. Recently, government announced to create an investment framework for 25,000 GPUs. I think a lot more still needs to be done. And why government is required? Because some of this investment is significant. Of course, private players will pitch in, but maybe something like PLI around such a topic could be very effective. The second thing is, today we are using all models which are on foreign data and outside the government's sovereign control. More and more, if we need to build models, we need to ensure there is a Indian sovereignty over the data and the models. Okay. So the government needs to start thinking, how do you, it's not to control, but we need to have some element of
localization.
So localization could be one way to look at it. It's also, if I'm building models, somebody, if none of the data is under the Indian jurisdiction, you don't know what's being. It's relevant because you don't know how it's built, how it's infiltrated, and tomorrow if I have to, somebody says I stop giving data to India. None of your models work. Okay, so that's why you need to start having your own sovereignty of data in building the models. And there's one more relevance to it, is we keep on saying LLMs, we need LILMs, which is large Indian language models. And one very good example of it is, of course, what Bhashini is doing. So Bhashini is actually building Indian language models and large Indian language models. Again, that's where the government needs to come into play, and where the private sector has a big role to play is taking these models, how we can in fact education, how we can impact healthcare, how we can impact one of our biggest challenges continues to be farming. We can build more models, we can create applications leveraging these models to address the society.
What we need.
So that's why the private, public, and especially government intervention is very critical in really implementing it in India for the Indians, and which is within its control in terms of its jurisdiction and sovereignty.
And what has been done in this regard so far?
I think first, very recently government has announced to invest in 25,000 GPUs. So they are going to create centers around India to make these available. The second is, again, what Bhashini is doing is anyway a public initiative. There are some others, like there's a startup called Krutrim, Ola Krutrim, which is, it's a nice translation, artificial, so they have named it Krutrim. Okay, so that also builds multilingual language models, but government has already started doing it. In fact, some of these use cases of social impact, government is already working on it. You can see some very interesting education use cases. What's been launched as Kisan Mitra again uses the Bhashini language model and addresses the problem of farmers. But all of these can be taken, and many more applications can be created by the private sector. What's classically happened in the whole financial stack, the government
jam stack.
correct, exactly. So
but we need to build on our own data.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Yardi, for speaking with us. Pleasure having you with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.